Hello, my friends. Who are my friends today? I said in my last wrap up, the sun is setting. So I don't know if the lighting is stunning or horrific, and you can see my shiny forehead. I said last time something about if I listed your name, you were officially a friend and you had to subscribe. Somebody thought I meant you had to become a member if I said your name. They were like, I don't have money for that. I was like, oh no, that's not what I was saying. Today, if you stumbled here and you haven't subscribed, like what's happening? And your name is Kiva, Jacob, Leanne, Ziomara, or Frank. Frank? Yeah. If that's your name, we're officially friends now. And you have to, you have to subscribe. Can't do more than one take. I have to get this video done before the sun is gone. It's the last day of the month. I just finished my last book of the month. Some of these are technically from March because I was doing a video where I wasn't telling you what I was reading for an entire month. Because of that, I don't remember like 3 of the books that I read. I'm about to tell you about them. I don't remember anything about them. If I'm not making content about books, the second I close that last page, everything leaves my mind. But anyway, how am I supposed to run these wrap-ups? Am I supposed to do the ones that I haven't talked about or go through my ratings of the ones that I have? I don't remember. Okay, in my latest video, I read all 4 of these because I was recreating a vlog from 10 years ago. That was my monthly 10 years ago video. Murder by Memory by Olivia Waite, I gave like a 3, maybe a 3.5. Flirting Lessons by Jasmine Guillory, I gave a 3. My Death by Lisa Tuttle, I gave a 3. And We the Animals by Justin Torres, I gave a 4. I did discuss the plot of those and my brief thoughts in the vlog. I have already reviewed A Million Junes by Emily Henry once, and then I recently talked about it in a TikTok. So that's a 4. It was a 4 then, it's a 4 now. I don't feel the need to go through it. I have 2 hour-long discussions for my Literally Dead Book Club picks. The live show for March was a little bit into April, so I didn't read this one until April. It's You Are Fatally Invited by Andy Pliego. It's a thriller, and I gave it a 4. And then I also read and did a live show for The Inheritance by Trisha Saglicha. This one was a 3. If you want to check out either of the live shows, the first couple minutes are completely spoiler-free, so you can get an idea of what the plot is, and also my brief thoughts before we get into spoilers. In my buzzword vlog, I read these 2, Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones, which I gave a 4, and The Last Session by Julia Bartz, which I gave a 3. So those are all the books that I've already talked about, and then we have these left. Before those, let's get into my stats of the month. As you can maybe glean already, I didn't, well, and it's true with these, I didn't end up with a 5-star this month, but I did have 9 4-stars and 9 3-stars, and then only 2 2-stars. So it feels, actually, I don't know what the average rating is. And I know you can probably do the math really quickly, but because there's actually like some 0.5s and 0.25s, I want to get really specific with it. 1 second. 3.5. My average rating for the month was a 3.5, not including my 1 reread, because that doesn't go towards my rating of the year. I listened to 1 book fully as an audiobook. That's the one that's not here. Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. 11 books I read completely physically. 8 I did a mix. I read 10 authors that were new to me that I've never read before, and 10 authors, or 9 authors that I've read from before, 1 more that was the reread. So technically I have read them before, but I've also read that entire book before, so that's why it looks like that. As usual, so many books I bought. That's the one at the top. 3 books from the library, 3 books that were from my TBR shelf. 3 books from my TBR shelf. I did a month-long challenge where I didn't read for content. I was reading whatever I wanted, and I only read 3 books off of my TBR shelf. 1 book that was sent to me, Great Big Beautiful Life. 1 was reread, like I said. And then genre-wise, mostly fiction, a lot of mysteries. I DNF'd quite a few mysteries, actually. That I don't include in these wrap-ups. I'm not sure when in the year I should talk about those. A couple romances, nonfiction, a couple fantasies. Now, into the books that I haven't talked to you about yet. This one's going to be a really brief review. I'm just going to tell you what it is, not really my thoughts on it, because I don't know if I have thoughts. It was just an experience. This is Paperbacks from Hal by Grady Hendrix. It's the twisted history of 70s and 80s horror fiction. So it's really fun to look at. because it shows you a cover and then talks about the specific books in specific categories, how they became a thing, how they saw like their rise and fall, and just like different tropes within it. And it just definitely feels like something that Grady Hendrix is really passionate about talking about. I tabbed one section. What did I want to talk to you about here? Oh, just some like nerdy, interesting stats about how books are sold, like how decisions are made about how much they're worth and what you can do with unsold inventory and how that's changed over the years. The importance of cover art and how at certain points like cover art really had to market a book even more so than it ever did before because, I don't know, of certain things. You should read it. Everybody who likes horror stuff, you should read this. It's nerdy, it's interesting, it's pretty to look at, and it's a good time. 2 thumbs up from me. What did I give it? A 4. Each thumb is worth 2 stars. Let's get into some fiction. This rating is a 3. Okay, I'm not gonna do that. Liquid: A Love Story by Miriam Ramani. This was interesting to see people's reactions to. The rating of this is really low. And I think, speaking of covers and design and marketing, this one, apparently the marketing like didn't work for a lot of people. It's so interesting because I went into this book, even though it says a love story in the title, I just kind of assumed that was like satirical or something, and I wasn't taking it seriously. I never went into this thinking it was a love story, let alone a romance. But so many people in their reviews are talking about how they were expecting there to be a love story and how they really disliked the book and it wasn't what they expected. And that's really disappointing to hear from people. And I wanted to love it so much to like combat that rating and like give it a 4 or 5 and be like, no, like it shouldn't have the 3 point something that it has on Goodreads. But even though I went into it with the right expectations, I didn't end up loving it. I liked the setup. You're following this woman who has decided, she's very unlikable, very pretentious, something that I love in a book character. And she decides that she's going to marry rich, and she makes a spreadsheet plan of how she's going to accomplish that. And she's going to go on 100 dates, and she just wants to find someone wealthy, and that's her whole goal. And throughout the story, it's the typical like situation of she realizes maybe that's not the best idea. She needs to love herself. She ends up spending time with her family. There's a lot of like cultural conversations. You get her childhood, and it's a lot more than just a love story, but it's also just a lot more than her going on these dates. I think what I was thinking is that it would be really organized. There's a spreadsheet on the cover, and I thought it'd be like date number 1, blah, 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 date number 2, blah, 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 date number 3, and we would just go through all of this really well organized exploration. It wasn't that. It was a little all over the place, and in the second half, the dates are kind of thrown to the wayside because she ends up having to go back to Tehran to be with her family, and there's certain things happening there. And there is like a relationship. She has a friend in here named Adam. He's in the synopsis, and it feels like it's gonna be that type of story that's like, because it says it here, that like maybe her true love was under her nose the entire time. And so it does feel like it's gonna be them, and he is in the story a lot, but it just, the relationship didn't develop, or her relationship with anybody else didn't develop, even with herself, in the way that I necessarily loved, but it was still a good book. Like I had a good time, and I will read from this author again because I liked the tone of it. Let's go to a 4.25 general fiction. This is Deep Cuts by Holly Brickley. It's fiction, but it is, there's 2 people here, and it is kind of their love story. It reminded me of reading The Favorites and Magnolia Parks as far as it's messy. I love mess. And also you go through the story, or at least I did in all of these cases, where I was wondering the entire time if the 2 people who were together, or who wanted to be together at the beginning of the book, were actually going to be together by the end. And if I even wanted that, and if I supported that. This was so close to being a 5 for me. I could talk myself into a 4.5 instead of a 4.25. I don't know if it really matters. But it's one of those stories that a lot of people might not like because it just feels like the author intended it to be a nonfiction, and she just wanted to take the opportunity to write all of these essays and nerd out about music. She's talking about the 90s and the 2000s and her love of music, and well, actually the 80s too, and even further back. I was just specifically thinking about the couple that stick out to me when she's talking about Modest Mouse And she like had this whole essay, the character, but it feels like it's coming from the author, about her first time listening to Outkast's Hey Ya. So there's a bunch of these moments. Some of them are longer than others. They're like essays, think pieces, or just short little moments of our character thinking about music, talking about the history of certain songs and relationships in bands, but then also how certain songs have impacted her own life and who have made her feel certain things, who've inspired her to do certain things with her life. So it feels like it was written as nonfiction and just somebody who wanted to share a lot of thoughts and feelings about music. And then she built, you know, a character and a plot around it. So our main character becomes a journalist throughout the story, but it kicks off with her meeting this guy, and they both have this love of music, and he's making music, and she becomes both his muse but also his kind of critic. She's the only person he trusts with his sound, and she helps him out with certain things and tells him when something's not working, but also is starting to become more involved by like writing certain lyrics. And it becomes about her wanting to feel like she has a certain amount of credit, and even if not publicly, just to him, like she wants to feel like he truly respects her as a person, but also she's falling in love with him, and maybe he's falling in love with her, but they can't really figure it out, and they don't want to ruin what they do have. And there's all of these questions like, is he taking advantage of her? Is she too involved? Is she not involved enough? The story starts out feeling like it's going to be both of their stories, and then it becomes a lot more about her, Percy, and her journey. And throughout the pages, she's also like dating other people. She's working through what she wants to do with her life. She is aspiring to be like work in music. And we go through a good amount of time, and it's a really messy, toxic adjacent kind of relationship. They both make mistakes. There's a lot going on in here that it was just really fascinating to follow their dynamic. And I don't even know by the end if I love the direction it went. I had such a good time reading it that it was actually my favorite book of the month. Speaking of the mess of Magnolia Parks, Daisy Haites The Great Undoing, I gave a 4. And I'll tell you right here and now, this is one of those books I don't remember anything about. I don't remember what happened in here, and it's probably just because I have read kind of back to back a bunch of Magnolia Parks and Daisy Haites stuff, and especially because this exists on the same timeline, like Jessa Hastings' series, the first 2 books, one is focused on Magnolia and one is Daisy, and they don't really get along. They're both in these really like passionate relationships with different boys, but still somehow they're both involved with some other boys that the other person is interested in. And so once you read one, you in the next one, like book 1 and 2 and book 3 and 4 are like together. You already know basically how everything ends up. This is like the 4th book, so I already read the 3rd book knowing how everything goes down. It's just I didn't get the perspective of these couple characters, because you're not just reading from Daisy, you're also reading from her brother Julian. Ugh, and I needed this book so bad, because in the 3rd book, certain things are happening with Magnolia and Julian, and you only get Magnolia's perspective, and there's moments where she's like using him to make someone else jealous, because they're not necessarily endgame in the series. But I needed Julian's perspective because I just wanted to be in his head and know if what he was doing to Magnolia was like intentional, or if he was really smitten with her, or like how he actually felt. And then I got it. That's all I remember from this book, is those scenes. There's a lot to do with Daisy and her relationships. I still care, and I gave this a 4, but all I really wanted was Julian, and I got Julian, so it was great. Magnolia Parks has such a hold on me, it's like concerning. Okay, let's do another one that is like a relationship, but also a lot of other stuff going on at the same time, because I can prove to you that I do like those, and that's not why I hated Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I gave this a 2. I didn't give it a 1 because Emily Henry is a good writer. I love her dialogue. I love her metaphors. I love her atmosphere. I love seeing her emotionally navigate everybody in the story, in all of her books, in all of her stories. I love that. This was boring. This was so boring, and it's not just because there's 2 different timelines. It's not because we're diving into somebody's backstory. It's just boring. Like, I don't know how anybody cares reading this book about this woman. I don't think that we got any reason to care about this life story, and I do not understand. We're following this woman's family line, like generations of people in her family, and I did not care. I listened to every single word. I was locked in. I didn't skim a second. And I've seen so many people who say in their reviews that they also thought that section was boring. The sections, multiple, because to me, listening to it, felt like it was half the book. Said that it was boring, saying they skimmed it and still gave the book 5 stars. I have screenshots of reviews that I don't understand. And now I'm convinced that everybody's just skimming those parts. I know it's not true, and I don't want to insult anybody who liked this book, because usually when I don't like a book, there is absolutely evidence that I can find of reasons why I think somebody else would like that book. They're just a different reader. This one is truly perplexing to me. And so maybe if you just weren't invested either and you skimmed all of that and you just read the romantic parts, I see how you could think this was a romance. I don't think it's a romance, and I will stand by that. And I know there's a lot of discourse about it right now, but I don't know. I also just didn't like the romance. We have Alice and Hayden, and they are both writers, and they're being possibly hired by this woman to tell her life story. And they're competing. He is very grumpy, not in a fun way, in my opinion, at any point in the story. I never got on board with him or his character or how he was acting towards Alice ever. Never liked him. And Alice is just like a Disney adult. I don't think the cover is really giving these vibes, but she said she likes to dress like a 90s Nickelodeon animated teenager. And her personality is just not what I'm used to with Emily Henry's writing. I like her pluckier, more strong-willed protagonists who have the ability to banter. And banter is one of my favorite things of hers, and I just don't think I saw a lot of it here. I just saw like an unlikable guy and a woman who just at every turn went along with whatever this guy said. He was like, I'm not interested in you, actually. And she's like, oh, okay. And then he's like, but I kind of want to do this thing with you. And she's like, oh, okay. And then he's like, actually, no, I'm going to push you in. And she's like, oh, okay. They really didn't seem interested in each other, and I can't see why they would be interested in each other. And suddenly they were interested in each other. Really interested in each other. And there was these like steamy scenes later in the book that I don't think we earned the romance, and I don't think we earned the steamy scenes. It would be like a flashback to characters that I don't care about, and then a steamy scene, and then flashbacks again. And I was like, this is not what I'm used to from Emily Henry. One thing I really didn't like was how the conflict was handled in this book. There was basically just one extra sentence that she could have said in their blow up argument at the end when they, go away and come back together, that could have like made everything just go so much smoother. And there was a certain journey that we were supposed to watch her go on where, she found her voice and found what she wanted to say and wanted to do with her life. But I just don't like how many scenes were focused on that. I don't think we got enough of her own personal growth, especially with her mother, because Emily Henry does a lot of side family stuff. And sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I just feel like her navigating the situation with her mother didn't feel like it was a woman in her 30s doing this. It felt like a teenager who's had like a couple rough years with her mom, and then suddenly, like in literally one conversation, everything flips between them and everything is fixed. Like, this is such a longer situation, and that shouldn't have been so easy to navigate. And because everything just moved way too quickly with her personality, with her relationship, romantic, and her relationship with her mother, I think it's because half of the book, to me, I don't think it was actually half the book, but it felt like half the book was focused on all of these other characters. And like, I partially understand why. There was a thing happening behind the scenes that like you could see coming from a mile away, but I just don't think the two storylines like really complemented each other. And it was so distracting to me every time we would get into the interviews, but it wasn't just because we were getting like half the book wasn't flashbacks, but I feel like half the book was either flashbacks or talking to Margaret about what she wanted and the story she wanted to tell and the relationship dynamics there. It felt like reading, Nicholas Sparks is romance, but like I think there was one like The Longest Ride that felt like it was half made up of like this past story that I equally didn't care about. I don't know. So many people say this is their favorite Emily Henry. I did not see any chemistry, and I also didn't see any intrigue in the past storyline, but I know obviously so many people did. So I believe you. I just don't understand. Let me rant about something that did feel romance-centric. This is not in my book by Katie Holt. I liked this book so much for the first 2/3, and then it just got to be a little much. I don't know how to fully describe it. This is also about two writers. They're in this writing workshop. She writes romance, he writes fiction, like general fiction, literary fiction, and he doesn't really respect what she writes. She is very strong-willed and passionate, and they have this back and forth. They don't like each other at the beginning, but find each other incredibly attractive, as you do, of course. And the teacher, because they're disrupting the class, tells them they have to work together on their next book, and they have to make it a mix of their two genres to really understand each other, to you know, exercise their writing skills. And so it's kind of this forced proximity story where they occasionally have to get together and work together. One thing that I like in a romance, I've talked about before, is when you get like a dream sex sequence, because I don't like a jarring sex scene, and I like to be led into it a little bit. Like, give me a little teaser of it, and then maybe 100 pages later, like really get into it. And a dream sequence does that for me, because I can get an idea of how the author's going to write the scene, the amount of like cringe it's going to have, and then it's like not real, so it's fine. This book did it so well because it did something that's kind of adjacent to that idea, and they wrote a sex scene together, and it was good. At one point they're like writing back, they're not in the same room, which is perfect for me because then it didn't turn into something real. But we got a sex scene between their characters. Sometimes you get books where there's a book inside the book, and the book inside the book isn't as interesting, so it just feels distracting when you get it. This one, not only were you invested in those characters and the love story that they were creating, but you then, because this book is only told from her perspective, you get his thoughts as if you're reading his perspective in the book, even though you're not, because you get his character's point of view. And so when he's writing his character's thoughts, it becomes so much about her in real life. And there's a moment where they're writing the scene back and forth, and she puts his real name instead of his character's name, and he's like, keep going. It was so good. I'm telling you, it was so good. And if you don't care when books get like way too sultry, and when men get like way too controlling and say weird shit in the bed, not weird, but like just get too familiar with main characters, I have a big problem with that. If you don't care about any of that, you'll probably like this. But because they were writing these scenes, and the book was so self-aware of how to structure a romance book, how to write a sex scene, like they're literally talking about how to write it, then we get actual sex scenes, like probably 3 later on. They felt too aware. Like he was saying everything that like a character would say, to the point that it felt like it should have been funny. And I would have liked it to then turn into like a rom-com where she was like, oh my God, you're being so silly. Like, stop it. This is so stupid. And he's like doing it intentionally. But no, he just turns it on. It just got a little cringy. It was very much like, a good girl scene. It was like, oh, you're such a good girl. You're being such a good girl for me. Look at me. Tell me you're mine. Like, show me exactly what I do to you. Like, it was just a little too much. And then that's not all that ruined it for me. There's this thing that authors do when they make, especially the male love interest, say some mean shit in an argument. Like, I understand a third act conflict, but I've read a couple books now that do it to a point where like he's saying something mean that he has thought the entire time he's known her, and he can't take it back after. And then I'm like, my guy, we have 30 pages left to go in this book, and you just said you've always thought she was so selfish and only thought about herself, and she was so mean to everyone around her. You can't recover from that in my mind. And at that point in the book, I'm like, I don't like him for her anymore, and I don't want them to be together in the end, because that was mean. I just think there's so many better ways to have a conflict or have a moment of growth between characters that isn't just somebody pointing out somebody else's flaws in the story and like shouting at them. And then the next scene, it's like, oh, I'm sorry I said that. Oh yeah, I'm sorry too. I should change that about myself. And like, even if she should, that's not how you get there. I did like so much of this. I think it's a 3.5. I was so mad because this could have been a 5-star romance for me. Okay, Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fado. This is the one that I just finished. I'm doing a live show with Jordaline for her Patreon. This was something that wasn't on my TBR, but I know all of the other horror girlies have been really excited to read it. And this was the perfect example of me thinking I'm not gonna like something and being correct, that a lot of the other horror people love. People love these like revenge stories, or just books from the perspective of somebody who is just doing bad stuff, and you're just in their head and they're accomplishing all of their goals and they're killing a bunch of people. And obviously you don't support what the character's doing like in real life, but it makes for a fun, interesting story, and it's like really gory. I don't know why I can't get on board with these types of books. There's the occasional one that I've been into, but usually if we're from the perspective of somebody who's just like wants to be a terrible person, that's not my favorite to read from. I ended up giving this a 2.75. Objectively, I think this is a well-written one. If that already sounds like something that you would like, it's a good version of that. It truly is just an unhinged woman, and she becomes a governess for this family. And she's not nice to anybody. She's not nice to the adults. Well, she's nice to the husband, because there's moments where he is like giving her too much attention and making his wife jealous, and she loves that. She's mean to the children. She's mean to the pets. The book literally opens with her meeting the other people who work in the home. There's like a chef, and she walks into the kitchen and there's like the head of a calf still with its like covered in blood and its hair and everything, and she picks it up and like takes a bite out of it. It's told with her internal monologue, just like judging everybody around her and thinking like, what's the next terrible thing I'm gonna do? And then she does that terrible thing. She's also reflecting on her terrible childhood and not necessarily giving like reasons why she is the way that she is, but we just get a full scope of this character's life in a short amount of time. And I think it was effective. I do not typically like these types of stories, but I'm interested to have the live show next weekend and talk about a bunch of things. This one was a 3.5, and I am officially done with Finlay Donovan, and I feel good closing the door, closing the chapter, because I wasn't sure after the last book. The last book I gave 4 stars, and it was the 4th book in the series, and it completed an arc, and I thought it was a really good choice, because a lot of us readers have been kind of stalling out on what she's doing, because a lot of this isn't a cozy mystery, but it's cozy mystery adjacent. And a lot of those, you have an independent mystery in each story, and El Castamano didn't do that. In the first book, you meet Finlay, who's a mother, and she gets overheard planning her book, and someone thinks she's actually committing a murder, and then they want to hire her, and then someone accidentally dies. And throughout the next 4 books, she's still dealing with that, and the chain of events that have happened from that, all the people who she's like gotten in trouble with and who think that she's a bad person and who are after her, and she has to hunt down other people, and everything's connected to the point where it just starts to get a little bit boring. I know there are people who absolutely love the series, like everything about it. I've given everything, I gave the first book a 5, and then it was like a 3, and then a 4, and then a 3 or something. And I like how it ended, because there was a lot of like finalized stuff in the 4th book, and I thought that's where I was going to end it, but I couldn't help but think, I want to know about the next arc. Like, is it going to be another 4-book story, or are they going to be more independent now? And I think it's both. So in this one, she sees her neighbor, or her neighbor has to come live with her because they find a dead body in her garden. And so her neighbor, Miss Haggerty, who we've met in other books, becomes a part of the story, and she's like irritating because she's always in the house, but she also maybe has some secrets, and Finley's trying to figure those out. And she does end up like solving the crime with her nanny, Vero, and they work together, and you have that same classic thing, but it felt like a really independent mystery that started and ended in this book. And I think that's cool that each book now is going to have something like that, but there is also so many, like this huge cast of characters who come into the story who we've met before. So you can't necessarily read any of the books independently, but it's like if you forget what has happened in the last one or 1-3 ago, that doesn't really matter anymore. That's how I feel about the series moving forward. But because this was an independent one and I still only gave it a 3.5, I'm good not continuing on, even though I felt good about that book specifically and everything that it did. A thriller that I picked up is Look in the Mirror by Catherine Steadman. I just wanted something short and wild, and I got that. I gave this a 4, and this is another one that I've completely forgotten everything about. I remember there are 2 timelines, 2 different women. One is somebody who's going to work for this like billionaire family on this private island, and when she gets there, the children are not there, and so she's kind of waiting around for what her job's actually going to be. And then dangerous things happen. She's not supposed to go in the basement. And then in the current day, maybe timeline, there's this woman who is inheriting an island from her billionaire father that she never knew he owned. So she arrives on the island. She's going to investigate it, or just like find out something about it. She can live there. I know there are notes around that are like scaring her away, maybe intentionally, or like little hints to like something bigger is happening on this island. And there is something bigger happening on the island, and billionaires are terrible people. So I think you can imagine things that go down, but I do remember being surprised by some things. And it was ridiculous. Like I remember feeling like this had a wacky ending. It was really over the top. It's a suspend your disbelief kind of one, but I definitely could not film like a spoiler review of this. I don't remember enough about it. The very first book that I started when I started my journey of not making content for a month was Floating Boy and the Girl Who Couldn't Fly by P.T. Jones, which is a collaborative effort from Paul Tremblay and Stephen Graham Jones, two of my favorite authors. What's so interesting about this is I could not tell you Stephen Graham Jones had any involvement in this. I expected it to be two perspectives, Floating Boy and the Girl Who Couldn't Fly. And it's something that I would have read like 10 years ago that's in like the speculative fiction teen thing where there's this girl and she's just like at a party one day and she sees this boy float through the trees and she follows him and wants to find out about his floating, but doesn't actually end up finding out about his floating. And then she has a family member who also starts to float. And then there's this villain who's trying to track down people who are floating. There's a lot of moving pieces and I didn't love anything truly about it, but it was an interesting story. And I like Paul Tremblay's writing, and I'm pretty sure this is written by Paul Tremblay. I don't know. I would love to know how the collaboration worked. Like, did they take alternate chapters? Did they just come up with ideas and then Paul Tremblay wrote it? It just feels like Paul Tremblay's writing. And maybe Stephen Graham Jones was just there to be like, hey, what about this? Or what about this? Like, you should put this in the plot. Let's do this. And that's how it's collaborative. It's interesting that they've never done another one since. But it wasn't exactly what I hoped, but it was still an interesting time. So I felt good about giving it a 3. And then I wanted to read this one in my 24-hour reading vlog, but I didn't have time for it, so I just finished it a couple days ago. It's Where the Dead Brides Gather by Nuzu Ono, and I gave this a 4. This is a horror book, but it's one of those horror books that isn't about like the jump scares and the terrifying ghosts, though there is ghosts. We're following, I didn't realize like it was going to be about a young person. I think she's 11, our main character, and she has this near-death experience and she ends up in this spirit realm and she gets to come back to the real world, and a lot of it is navigating these relationships with her family. She has multiple parents and they all engage with her differently, each other differently. And as she discovers she has come back from the spirit realm with these powers, everybody is now feeling very differently about her. I don't want to spoil exactly what her abilities are, but she ends up learning a lot about this family and has the ability to like kind of ruin someone or make someone's life better. And so people are kind of scared of her and these abilities. But she is an 11-year-old girl, and it was just such an interesting perspective, an interesting character age to give, because she has no intent, like good or bad. She's just kind of existing and has no idea what's really happening. She feels very alone. But then she can like go back into this spirit realm and she has kind of responsibilities there. And there's a group of people that are the dead brides that she is interacting with. She's just this naive character. And if you aged her up a little bit, I think she could be like this badass, powerful person who gets these powers, and it would be handled so differently. It's like she's being tested in the spirit realm and she has certain capabilities and ways that she could like grow and impact other people. It was a really interesting story. It would have gotten a 5 if it was a novella. It looks shorter than it is. This is still like a traditional almost 300-page book. I think I would have liked it to be a little shorter and a little punchier, but it was really interesting. And I'm definitely intrigued to see what else. This author's written a bunch of other things, but there's one that seems like more in reality, but people can like body swap, that's coming out later, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Literally Dead book club pick. I wanted to make sure I liked the author's writing, and I do. This was more fantastical than I would like to pick for my book club, but if this one is more real world, which I think it's going to be, I just have really high hopes for it. So usually I do these wrap-ups and I only review like 3 to 4 books that I haven't already talked to you about, but there were so many that I didn't talk to you about that I don't feel like I really need to go through my superlatives in a thorough way, so I will do them really quickly. My best book of the month was Deep Cuts. My best sequel of the month was Daisy Haites. Best audiobook of the month. If I were to recommend one, it would be Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. I think I did like half and half for this one, and I liked the audiobook, but also if you like thrillers that have multiple narrators, You're Fatally Invited has that. There's a lot of perspectives and a lot of things going down in that one. Biggest surprise, I think Deep Cuts, just because I didn't know I was even going to buy this until I saw it at the bookstore, and I was really worried it was going to be a book about fame because it's about music, but it turned out to be more of like character work, and I enjoyed it more. Obviously I was hoping that I would like it, but I liked it more than I think I thought I would. A book that I would recommend most, I think it's going to be this one, because my issues with it I don't think are going to be the popular opinion. And then this one, if you're just getting into horror and you already like a long book, or you already like historical fiction, or you already like vampires, that's the one. Most beautiful. I'll be honest, this was not the month for beautiful covers. I actually don't think I absolutely love anything. Yeah, no, I don't. I think my favorite is We the Animals, because it's just got good vibes. It just feels very free. It feels very fun, but you also get the sense that it's heavy from the cover, and that is the tone of the book. Favorite character? I don't think I have a standout character. It's gonna be Julian, who I don't like as a character, but I do like reading about. And then, what was this one's name? Dorothy. I guess Dorothy. Maybe I would read more from her in the series of like solving mysteries on a spaceship. Probably not, but I liked her enough in here. So that's everything that I read in the last month. 6 weeks. We'll say 6 weeks. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you again in another video soon, and I hope you had a better reading month than I did. I did have some 4s, but like, where are the 5s? If you had a 5 and you've stuck around until the end, please tell me your latest 5-star read. I hope you had a good one recently. Bye!